All right, we are live, and thank you everybody for attending our this latest session of Voices of Healthcare Cloud. We have missed you guys over the holidays. Hope you all had a wonderful time with your family and hopefully some much needed rest from all of you. Well, we are back in the swing of it and hoping to bring you some great content over the next few months. So if this is the first time joining us, thank you and welcome to the group. This webinar series is really focused on bringing you all great solutions that are using Microsoft technology for healthcare specifically. And so we bring you various different presenters to talk about different technical enablements and healthcare outcomes. So before we get started, I want to go ahead through a few housekeeping items. This is a Microsoft Teams live event. So we have moderated Q&A. And so we would love for you to engage with us. We have some great presenters for you, and they want to make sure they answer your questions. So please use the chat feature. Let us know now who you are, what company you represent, maybe where you're joining us from, so we can engage with you and so we can answer any questions that you might have. This session is being recorded. We will post it to the same link, the same blog post that you got the attendee join. So how do we engage? If you notice in the top right-hand corner, there's a little box that has a question mark in it. If you click on that, that's when your Q&A panel will open up. And then down at the bottom, you'll see that you can post a question. These are moderated Q&As. So if you want us to answer you privately, you can definitely say that there, but most of all, we want to share your great questions or comments with the rest of the group so we can all be learning from each other. So please engage with the Q&A and go ahead and post there who you are, where you're calling from, and we will get on to the content. So for our presentation today, like I said, we have a really great presenter. I am excited to bring you Michael Hobbs. He is a new member of our team and has great experience in healthcare around supply chain and field service optimization. And so we are so excited to have him join us today. And Michael, I am seeing your screen. And so we're actually seeing the presenter mode. There you go.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, off to you, Michael.
All right, Shelley, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for your time on today. And so have the pleasure today to really talk to you about Microsoft's strategy in terms of building a resilient supply chain and really focused in on the provider side of the house. And so from a Microsoft perspective, when we look at supply chain, and this is across all of our different industries, right? And part of what we're going to talk about today is really some of the innovation that we've seen in other industries that we're going to be bringing into the healthcare, right? And so we're going to look at, for example, today we'll focus in around supply chain visibility. And so what I wanted you to understand is part of our strategies and the strategies that we're bringing into healthcare this year in 2022 are three strategies. One is focused in on field service, asset management, maintenance management, and asset tracking. And so we've got an initiative and launched on that. The other one is around implant management, right? The automation of what exists today in terms of bill only, and we've got a strategy in terms of automating that entire process. Today, what we're going to focus in on is our supply chain insights and supply chain control tower. And I think it's evident over the last 18 to 24 months how our hospitals, our organizations and providers have struggled with just visibility, right? Just the visibility to see into their supply chain. So those are the three strategies that Microsoft is launching in 2022 for the healthcare providers. And what I want to do next is kind of give you a little bit of what's underneath the engine. What what is it that makes these three strategies, in particular today, make supply chain insights and supply chain control tower work? And so we bringing in, as part of the strategy built within the overall solution, is artificial intelligence. So we're bringing in artificial intelligence such as image understanding or computer vision, forms recognition, not just OCR scanning, but actually intelligent form recognition, where the form, it's intelligent. It reads it, it understands it. Speech, language, and decision. So in decision, for example, such as anomaly detection. So built within the solution and is the artificial intelligence. Also part of the solution is technology. Now, whether it's Microsoft technology or partner technology, within all three of those strategies, in particular with the implant management, we're bringing in things such as computer vision or RFID or Bluetooth or cellular. So we not only have the artificial intelligence, but also the technology, in particular to asset tracking and into the implant tracking. That's where that technology play will come in. And then we've wrapped the artificial intelligence and the technology with supply chain methodology, right? So some of that supply chain methodology would be around demand management or forecast planning. And so the ability to bring those types of supply chain methodologies, as well as if you've got forecast demand and you've got forecast planning and demand planning, also bringing in things such as intelligent order management. All of those are going to allow you to start doing things such as master planning. And you'll see some of this when we get into the supply chain insights, supply chain control tower as well. What that looks like is just a great example of the Microsoft ecosystem that consists of the supply chain dynamics, the tools, the Power Platform, all built on the Azure AI, and then we bring along into that as well the cognitive, and all of that is built on the Azure Learning. So what might that look like for you from a hospital perspective? And the meaning of it is something like this, right? So if you were to look at all three of those strategies, what we would have the ability to do, for example, is we could have a computer vision set up in your laboratory system where we're tracking supplies there, or RFID. If you needed to have RFID in the storage room, you could do that as well. If you were tracking your assets, your mobile assets, whether they're inside the hospital or outside the hospital, the ability to do that. The ability to do IoT sensors, right? So we could have an IoT sensor set up in the cath lab where we're going to be tracking the anomalies that would occur and allow us to do preventive maintenance. So this is just an example of taking all of that solution, the strategies that I showed you. If you wanted to track your assets, your wheelchairs, your ventilators inside the facility, you would have the ability to do that. And our focal point in doing all of this is really to bring in and bring together for you not only your supply chain, but tie that in, of course, in this day of value-based pricing, tie that in so that you can have dashboards where you could look at what are my sensors that are out there, can I track my ventilator utilization, and can I tie that to my occupancy bed as well. So it's the data, it's the artificial intelligence, but it's bringing that supply chain methodology as well. And then kind of the architecture for that in terms of how does it work? Quite simple. It's our ability to bring in the standalone systems that you might have across your hospital today. Again, using those technologies, those sensors that we have, and bringing all of that into Azure, right? Which, of course, we're going to have our data lake in there. And then also bringing into play all of that cognitive artificial intelligence. And all of that then is wrapped around using supply chain methodologies and the application. So that's kind of the engine, right? That's the engine that makes all three of those strategies work. And I wanted to give you just a snapshot of what's underneath each of those. So we're going to go ahead and dive into supply chain insights and supply chain control tower. So let's take a look at that. So certainly what we have heard or what we've seen in the healthcare is in talking to hospitals, they said the biggest challenges that they've had is around visibility into their supply chain, right? And these are just some comments as we've talked to hospitals across the U.S. In terms of partnering with Microsoft, where they said, hey, our challenges have been visibility, right? There's a worldwide shortage in aluminum. The impact is hospitals are challenged to get crutches. Another facility shared with us where, because of the worldwide shortage in plastics, they are having a huge back order in flush syringes. So clearly within healthcare, hospitals, organizations are wanting to look deeper into their supply chain so that they can anticipate what's coming next. And what Microsoft is bringing into healthcare, now we've had success with this, and my colleague Omar Chandri is going to speak more to it, but we've had success with this in the automotive industry and in the manufacturing industry. And so what we're bringing into healthcare is what we call supply chain control tower, supply chain insights. So from a healthcare perspective, think about the ability now that you understand the engine of what's there in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of the common data model, we would bring in, for example, all of your standalone systems. So whether it be your cath lab, your EP, if you had a standalone warehouse, your ERP, regardless of whether it was cloud or on-prem, but bring all of your standalone systems into the control tower and create a digital twin. Right. So if you're a multi-hospital or multi-state or a regional IDN, the ability to aggregate all of that information, create a digital twin, and bring that into the control tower. Then we would also bring in all of your different suppliers, whether it's your pharmacy distributor, your med-surg distributor, or your standalone suppliers, your direct suppliers, and bring those into the control tower as well. And then that allows us then to utilize things such as demand planning, intelligent order management, supply forecasting, and give you visibility to now see all of that as part of being the control tower. And so the way it would work, simply, here's all of your standalone systems. That information is brought into the control tower, and then we would be able to map back out through your suppliers. So giving you visibility not only to your tier 1 suppliers, but your tier 2 suppliers, and then all the way back to your raw goods suppliers as well. So giving you that visibility into the supply system, and also bringing in the risk management piece. So working with organizations such as Swiss Re or Bing, bringing in those information and then allowing you to begin to see the impact of what's going on in the world, whether it be weather related or industrial related, and how that's impacting your supply chain. And so that allows us to really do a transformation. So today within healthcare, right, this is the way supply chain looks today, right? You've got all of your standalone systems that are out there and they're disconnected, and you're really being reactive. And you can only see into your tier 1 supplier. What will happen with supply chain insights, supply chain control tower, is you're going to be able to have a new world of which now it's about the collaboration of all of your data, all within one control tower, and your ability to see not only your tier 1 supplier, but your tier 2 supplier, and all the way back to the raw goods. So imagine, I think it was 3 years ago when the hurricane hit Puerto Rico. Well, no one realized at the time that 50% of the IV solutions were coming out of Puerto Rico. So this would allow us to map out where your manufacturers are. And so if there's a hurricane that's coming into the Caribbean Sea, you're actually going to get notification that there's a hurricane that's targeted for the Caribbean, and you've got these manufacturers or these OEM suppliers that are located and may be impacted by that weather condition. So this is just one example of how the control tower will work. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Omar. And Omar, why don't you take us another level deeper in terms of supply chain insights and supply chain control tower?
Awesome. Thanks, Michael and Shelly, for having me. My name is Omar Chowdhury, and I'm the GPM for a product that is just been released into public preview called Supply Chain Insights, as Michael has mentioned. And That's what we'll be, jumping into right now. So great. So, Michael had touched on this, on this kind of data first approach, but essentially what we're trying to do with supply chain insights is really bring all of your data together to be able to give you a type of digital twin of your end-to-end supply chain. And when we mean digital twin, it's not really just even the nodes of your digital twin. It's really bringing a digital twin data set together. So this is data coming in from your internal systems, your ERPs, your WMS, your TMS systems. And then it's layering our own Microsoft data and our partner data on top of that, such as Swiss Re and other partners such as Bing and so forth. And then going one step further and being able to provide you a collaboration experience where you would then be able to work with your partners and be able to have data collaboration, and then take that data that your partners are feeding you, whether that's commitment data, that's compliance data, that's sustainability data, any data that you are sharing within supply chain insights, being able to bring that data and tie it into this digital twin data set, and then allow for us to be able to bring a lot of our AI capabilities, our ML capabilities on top of it, so that we can enable you to create much more predictive supply chains. So a lot of what's out there today is really around reactive kind of resilience around your supply chain. An event has happened and we now have to go in and mitigate the risk of that event. And the foundation of this product will also be around making sure that you have visibility into your supply chain and you're able to manage those events. But it's also about getting to a state where we can then forecast or even predict what might happen in certain scenarios. And that's really where we will bring our AI capabilities. And then how do you go in and solve these type of challenges? How do you collaborate with your internal stakeholders and make sure everybody from different facilities is aligned, working together, as well as how do you collaborate with your external stakeholders and bring all of them together, including bringing together the data and the artifacts that you have that kind of support this. So, Michael touched on this a little bit earlier, and it's really about when we looked at how you can make your supply chains more resilient, it wasn't for many of our manufacturing customers, customers like Daimler Trucks North America and other large customers, looking at your supply chain wasn't always just looking at your suppliers, but it was also looking at your customers, your distribution providers, your 3PLs. So it could be all sorts of people, participants that are along the way in your supply chain. And it wasn't just tier one, it could be tier one, tier two, and beyond. So we really had to create a type of system that could enable an organization to build out their networks and expand the networks, and for them to further also invite and pull their supply chain networks in so that we could have this multi-tier visibility. So the easiest way we like to describe supply chain insights and kind of give everybody the concept of what we're trying to do here is that you can think of it as like a type of LinkedIn for supply chain. And so every participant in this app is an equal participant. So our own Microsoft Devices team is leveraging the application, and they have participants in their supply chain like Intel and other companies. So they would invite these companies into supply chain insights. And once they come into supply chain insights, they are also an equal participant and can further invite their network. So I'll jump into the product really quickly just to show and give everybody a teaser of what the product is and give the best demo I can within the time frame. So this is the landing page that everybody, all participants would land on. And essentially we have three key things that we ask each participant to go do first. One is bring your data in. So this is the data that Michael mentioned that, hey, can we bring some of your own in-house data together and give you analytics and surface some of those insights right away without inviting anybody or connecting with any suppliers or anything. can we give you a digital twin representation of your supply chain? Can we then surface some analytics and risks around your inventory and so forth? So the first thing is bring your data in, and we have a very kind of easy to use experience for business users. So we wanted an experience where there was no kind of heavy coding or these type of things. That we basically bring a very simple, easy to use experience. And so the backend ingestion experience for here is Power Query. If you're used to Power Query, then you know it's kind of like an Excel on steroids, and you can bring in a lot of your data in by either using our out-of-the-box connectors. So we're continuously adding connectors, but we have SAP, Oracle, SCM, but also you can bring Excel files, you can connect into a data store and all of that goodness. So once you bring your data in, and there was a set of entities that was here. So these are the entities that will essentially drive a lot of what I'll show you in the supply map, the news, analytics, and so forth. So once you bring your data in, you start seeing a view of your own warehouses, your own hospitals, your own, and then also your own supply chain. So who are your vendors, where are their sites, where are their warehouses, and what is the risk factor associated to them? So you might have some that have a higher risk score, and you can start understanding what is driving this higher risk score. So we have here right now, it's really around the latent risk of natural disasters happening. So could a flood happen here? Could a tornado happen here? And if it does have a high probability of a risk, and an actual event is actually happening at that time, so a tornado is hitting, and what you would end up seeing is kind of a circle and a radius of whether the facility that either supplies you or is your own warehouse is going to be impacted. You would then be able to go in and dig in and see some of your open orders related to that site or warehouse. So here you can look at the open orders. You're able to look at the order lines, see what's within those order lines, if everything is going to be on time, and have visibility into that. And in case if you need to change anything to your orders, you can go to your IOM system or your WMS system, or whichever system where you're housing and cutting those orders. So in addition to this, what we really wanted to bring was, how can we bring additional risk signals? So we'll be bringing signals like financial risk around your suppliers. So right now it's latent natural disaster, weather risk, but financial risk, logistics risks around ports. So if you're getting medical supplies that are coming in through a port, we'd be able to give you risk signals around a potential delay and so forth around the logistics and port risk. And also really getting around the news capability. So here, what we are calling AI Smart News, this is what we've collaborated with our AI team on, to essentially surface news articles related to your supply chain. So if you have a supplier providing you with masks in Pakistan, maybe, and there is some sort of issue related to that, to the port there, or some sort of issue related to a strike or natural disaster that's happening there, then we would surface those type of articles that are related to your suppliers, plus related to something that could cause a production downtime. And on top of that, what we're coming out in the near future is that we want to parse through these news articles, come up with AI models to understand how much this type of event actually typically results in and what kind of production downtime does it result into? Does it mean a 20% reduction in capacity, 30% reduction in capacity? Because then we can take that data and really even go further when we get into the analytics and surface alerts and so forth. So So now when we get into analytics, we essentially can start seeing a view of our supply chain. And here what we have is kind of a relationship map regarding some of the products, the subcomponents of those products, and then the warehouses that these products are stored in. So this starts allowing you to kind of investigate where your goods are, where these products are being housed, and so forth, and then get into really your supply and demand scenario. So here, what we're actually showing is that what is the top 10 parts that you might have a supply shortage of based on what your demand is, and what might you actually have an oversupply. So in some cases, right now for this data set, we don't have any parts that are in significant oversupply, but in the cases of even our own devices team holding on to processors and chips and these type of things in excess to a certain amount actually is very expensive and costly to the company. So we try to make sure that they stay within a certain buffer limit. And so you could have oversupply products, but then you can go through and actually see where or when are you going to be impacted by these products. So what is the time to impact for this type of product? The other thing you can do is actually get into the almost the what if type of question. So what if something happens to this supplier? How will it actually impact my supply chain? So you can start asking questions like, well, if this supplier does get impacted and I see a 20% reduction in supply for this car audio parts, then when will I be impacted, and by how much will I actually need to come up with, or either find an alternate supplier or find another hospital or warehouse where I can actually pull that inventory from. So this gets kind of updated. It allows you to do some what if scenarios in case we see a sudden surge of 29%, then at what point and what week will I be actually impacted? And there's a drill down for this as well, but kind of for the sake of time, I won't get too much into it. I will, however, show kind of a view of how you can look at the relationship between your parts, your warehouses, and where these parts are stored, and then also look at kind of what are the different components within these parts. So you can start seeing kind of a digital twin representation of your supply chain. So you have kind of a map view, and then you have kind of a relationship view to see everything from the finished goods down to the subcomponents. But then you also have views that are coming out where we can see the subcomponents all coming together to the finished goods. And so what we found was that a lot of what we are leveraging in the manufacturing space also translates over to healthcare and the hospital networks and these type of things. So the last piece I wanted to touch on was really our partner directory. So here, similar to the use case where you might have Microsoft inviting Intel, this is where now you can go in and either look at our directory and find your other participants, or you can invite other participants and your suppliers into supply chain insights. And once you actually connect with them and kind of create this friend request and friend acceptance, then you can do further kind of deeper collaboration with those suppliers. And so you can ask them for data. You can actually ask them for data related to maybe what they're going to provide you over the next 16 weeks. So you can create a data collaboration project. You can add 1 or maybe 20 of your suppliers, and you can ask them information regarding what are you going to supply over the next 16 weeks. You can ask them about their certification information. And because everybody is mapping to an industry standard data model on both sides, then this data is able to come back and we are able to aggregate it together without you having to do that aggregation and summary. And then we can provide your committed supply here. This is just one use case. There could be other use cases as well. So I'll pause and if there are any questions and do a quick time check.
Yeah, we have a few inquiries, Omar and Michael, about how can somebody engage with Microsoft for this solution, and what does a typical POC timeline and effort look like? If you guys can get some light on the process of engaging some expertise from Microsoft, if somebody is interested.
Absolutely. Great. So I will present a link at the end of this session where you can go to the Supply Chain Insights Microsoft kind of page, and where you can sign up to be a part of the public preview. And once you sign up to be a part of the public preview, you'll get our communications and how you can get into our communities, ask questions, how you can get an environment where you can then start uploading your data and to see kind of get your own digital twin and your own setup going. So that I will show towards the end of the call. And the typical POCs, and this is with, most of our early adopter customers are, I would say, are the S500 customers. So we're talking about Daimler Trucks and two of probably the world's largest automakers. So they have quite a large data set. And I think for all of them, the max POC time to be able to get your own data inside Supply Chain Insights. So that is find the data, map it to our data model, and be able to get it into Supply Chain Insights. The whole POC, the longest is really 12 weeks. Some can be much shorter. This is really designed to be not an application that is heavy or time consuming to use. You will see when you go through the sign-up process takes you maybe minutes and you're in Supply Chain Insights. The ingestion experience is really easy. It's Power Query. If you only want to see just your suppliers and the risks related to your suppliers, you only have to bring in your vendor information and your suppliers, their addresses, and so forth. If you want to see both supply and demand, then you would need to bring in the full kind of gambit of the data that we have here. And there is a Microsoft Docs page on which of these entities drives the supply map and news, and which of these entities then further is required to get you the analytics. So if you just want some of the basics, bring in your warehouses, bring in your sites, your locations, and so forth. And then if you want the full gambit of analytics, then go through and bring in a lot of the rest of these entities. And again, it's Power Query, so you can bring your data to a data lake and maybe set up a nightly recurring refresh, and or you can do it even on an hourly basis, but you have the ability to set up that refresh. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Omar. Perhaps one more, if you approach this from a business standpoint, can you comment on some tangible benefits that you see customers realizing in the short run after having implemented this?
Yeah. So definitely one thing that our DTNA has found is that they have actually went through the process of not just bringing in their data for supply map and importing their data. They've actually went in and started inviting their suppliers to their network. And by inviting their suppliers to their network, they are doing data collaboration and getting this commitment data from their suppliers. So now they have visibility into their current stock, in transit, and demand data that's coming from their own ERP systems, committed data that's coming in from their suppliers. They're not doing any aggregation. All of it is because it's coming in from the same language from these multiple suppliers. We do the aggregation. So they've seen a big reduction in how much work they've had to do with bringing in Excel files on Monday mornings from different suppliers, merging them, trying to get them into BI. So there's some labor that's being reduced for this scenario. The second piece is they're getting visibility and are able to jumpstart on any potential parts that they might have a delay in, and try to reduce some of the premium shipping costs that they've had, and also be able to track who is at fault for some of this premium shipping and so forth, and be able to reduce some of that. So already there, at least some of our large manufacturers are seeing this. We do have a very large coffee company, which is using this just for a very base scenario. So they have kind of like a weekly meeting regarding the positions of all of their cups, their coffees, and so forth, and some of their materials that they're using to serve. And so they basically also are able to use this as their weekly stand-up to understand what they might have potential shortages of and so forth. Whereas before they were going through and doing lots of data manipulation, data aggregation, and so forth. By bringing this all into a data lake, pulling it in and being able to have all this kind of at your fingertips, and also have kind of the supply and demand, some what if analysis. So if you have a surge of 10% demand, then what will they need to do, and which vendors will they need to are better to go and get the extra supply from, and so forth. So so there's both benefit in being able to plan, being able to understand what's going on in your supply chain, and then also being able to have much more accurate data without having to go in and build all this data set every week.
Excellent. Thank you, Omar. I know Michael shared a slide earlier. Can you guys share a point of view on some healthcare specific scenarios that you would suggest would be easy and important at the same time to track in real time? Can you share some ideas for our audience here?
Yeah, Michael, I'm happy to, but if you want to.
Yeah. So in particular, from a healthcare perspective, think about utilizing this. You would want to identify what are those critical products that you want to be able to track, right? What are those critical products that probably are not your med-surg commodity items? There may be a few on the med-surg commodity items, and then who are those critical suppliers that you want to see into their supply chain? So for example, right now, your tier 1 supplier may be just your pharmacy distributor or your med-surg distributor. And so you want to be able to see beyond just who's my distributor, but who are the manufacturers that are then providing those products to the distributor, all the way back to who are the raw good manufacturers. So I think from a healthcare perspective, that's what we're hearing from hospital executives and supply chain executives, is they want to look deep into their supply chain, not just who their tier 1 supplier is. It might be your med-surg distributor, but even beyond that into the OEM manufacturers and all the way back to the raw good manufacturers as well.
And another use case can also be around, as Michael mentioned, some of your strategic suppliers that might be providing you catheters and needles and these type of things. By tracking them and having kind of a real-time event tracking capability, because many of our partners, whether it's DTNA or General Motors, they have thousands of suppliers that are actually critical. And for them to go through and aggregate the risk of a company's financial health, any type of weather event that's happening to them, and when we say financial health, we generally are correlating financial health of a company and what we've seen historically to the quality of products they then start turning out and supplying, all the way down to whether you want to do business or with this type of company and something has happened, whether they've lost a certification in that country, and seeing a news article related to them. And so it's really being able to have a kind of an application that can monitor and provide this kind of radar over your entire supply chain and be able to give you those that insight. And it could be even for your tier 2 suppliers, if you have their information, for you to have greater lead time. So if a tier 2 supplier that's a metal supplier for the needles company, and who they are, you would bring them into the supply map, and we would also be running our radar across them as well. So if something happened to them, now you can go in and survey them and say, hey, are you going to be okay? We saw this is something happening to your tier 2. Will you be able to supply us with the needles on time and so forth? And then if that's not the case, then you have much greater lead time than waiting for the tier 1 to to reach out to you.
Excellent, excellent. I can imagine scenarios around home health or hospital at home. For this could be a very transformative idea for that.
Yeah.
On the note of engaging with OEMs, Omar and Michael, can you guys comment on how easy it is for OEMs to provide their data, and what does that process look like typically in your experience?
Yeah. So I would say this framework that we are building is a much more easier framework than going out and building it yourself. And the reason I say that is because two of our early adopters are customers, including DTNA, are customers that were actually going and building a custom application, web app application with portals that would help their suppliers figure out how to connect through APIs and give them this data. Another large shoe and footwear company, it's a global brand, had actually built out this type of application, in its very raw form, and had started onboarding some 20 odd suppliers. And it's very difficult because all of these suppliers are at different levels of maturity. Some are still on Excel and some have very advanced systems. And so by building this, you almost have to build all of this framework plus the ease of use of what Power Query is and the capabilities to kind of educate and ramp up these suppliers. So for us, and this is for any application, the challenge will always be educating them on the entities that are needed. But beyond that, because of the marketplace of opportunities or things we have that you can choose from, or ways that you can upload your data. If you want to bring in your data through Excel, more power to you from a supplier perspective. If you want to use our connectors, you can also do that. We have all sorts of different out-of-the-box connectors that are in Power Query, so you can use those frameworks. And so this way, these companies now don't have to be in the business of managing or using the software or building the software, and it requires a lot of engineers and so forth to build both the radar capability, the ingestion experience, the AI models on top of it, plus being able to create a partner network. And so they can put all of that aside, and that's essentially what they've done. They put their programs on hold and said, let's just focus on onboarding our suppliers. And so far, the time frame that it takes to onboard the suppliers is usually around a few meetings over a 2-week period to just educate them on which entities we need and how they can align this data, and then and then they can connect the same way that you're able to bring in your data. They would connect and bring in their data. So it's a much more smoother ride. That doesn't mean that there's no education involved, but a much more smoother ride than having some more technical solution where they have to build some code on their side and connect into APIs and this type of thing. A low code, no code experiences is at least worked out much better.
Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Omar.
Yeah.
Hey, Omar, this is Shelly. This is great content. We're getting a lot of activity here. Another kind of trend in some of the questions is again around the suppliers, but the question is more around, it seems that they might be giving up some competitive advantage or highlighting their weaknesses in the fact that, they might be behind or impacted by some sort of natural disaster. Are you seeing that suppliers are willing to share data, or have they struggled in their willingness to be open to that type of insight?
Yeah, this has always been kind of a concern. So in one, at least for the suppliers, because the suppliers always want to reassure their customers that everything is going to be okay. But this is partly why we built the solution, is that a company can come in here and a hospital can come in here and upload their suppliers, because you have all this information in your own vendor master, and start getting a view and get this radar over your supply chain without actually asking for this, asking for anything from your suppliers. So at this stage, you haven't asked for anything. We have your supplier list. We brought it in here, and you're monitoring them to see if there's any event or if there has been something from Duns and Bradstreet that has said there's a financial shift, or there's some sort of news that says there's a strike or something of that nature. All that radar happens without them knowing you're even getting that signal. Now, there is, of course, the next phase of making sure that you can get data from them, which is around commitment data, or you might have scenarios around compliance data or sustainability data. And so these are some of the other scenarios we are looking to bring on in the April timeframe. And, you know, it is a challenge to, I would say, for some of the companies to kind of get the suppliers to give them the data, not because they feel like they're losing a competitive edge, because we kind of, the way that the application works is that none of the participants who are involved in this data collaboration know about each other. So here you kind of have two participants. The name is new, and this is just demo data, and you have Fabricam. Neither of these two companies know about each other. And you might have 40 or 50 companies where you want to get commitment data coming in on Monday morning. And so none of them know about each other. And this data only comes into the Microsoft Devices team, is aggregated for the Microsoft Devices team. Now, they can always shut off this data. And the way that the data collaboration works is that everything you've shared up until that point, we say, hey, you've shared it, you can stop sharing. And you can cut off your sharing at any time you want. Fabricam can do that. But of course, everything that they have shared so far, so if they've been sharing for a year, that data could potentially have been pulled down by the devices team. But that's data they're sending over, oftentimes over Excel and over email anyways. And what we are doing is providing them a framework where everybody can speak the same language and everybody can map their data to an industry standard data model for supply chain. And because they can do that, then we can start doing all the aggregation for them, as you saw in the analytics. And what we're saying is that in the future, we could also, it could also be a two-way street, because in data sharing and data collaboration, it's not just data that's coming into the Microsoft Devices team. Intel can actually request data from us and from the Microsoft Devices team to send back over to them as well. And so this is where we are looking at scenarios, especially scenarios with some of the Devices team's core strategic customers, and so that we can get demand signals from our strategic growth customers on a nightly basis. They can use supply chain insights to plumb that over. And we can now start even giving our suppliers much more up-to-date kind of demand information and signals as well. So, you know, there's sometimes less incentive for them to supply the information. Oftentimes, you know, especially the customers we're working with today, they're very large customers, so they're able to kind of request this. But for the most part, we found it much more receptive than the old model, where you have to get your supplier to write some code and connect into EDI, or write some code and connect into their API. If you can come and show them that, hey, this is something you can do in a no code way, and you can bring it into any, you know, you can get up and running pretty quickly. This will help us with our planning, and in turn, you know, we can help you get better demand insights and so forth. So far, we haven't seen too much pushback from the suppliers. And often, actually, what's funny about our suppliers that have onboarded with DTNA is that once the suppliers on board, they start looking at the power of supply chain insights and saying, okay, well, we also want to use this for our own self. And they start importing their own supplier data and start monitoring their suppliers and stuff like that. So, and now we're actually getting feedback and input and suggestions for new features from the suppliers. So yeah, I hope that helps, Shirley.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. So just doing a time check, we are coming up on the end here. We would love for any final questions to come through in the chat, or Omar, Michael, any kind of final information sharing or slides that you guys want to review in the next few minutes.
Yeah, no, Shelley, I think I just want to say, hey, thanks for all of those who have joined in, and just to understand, this is for healthcare, this is new. This is something that Microsoft has had some tremendous success in the manufacturing industry and the automotive industry. And we found it and have had, hospitals come to us to say, hey, what are you doing outside of healthcare that you could bring into healthcare and help us transform our supply chain? So we certainly believe the supply chain insights is a key tool and application where hospitals can begin to transform and get visibility into their supply chain.
Awesome. And so just kind of wrapping up, team, I think I provided the preview link for the Supply Chain Insights public preview in the chat, but we will be sure to post that to the blog when we post a recording of this session. And so please look out for that. And if anybody had missed the session today that you want to share, we would love for you to be able to share that with your colleagues or folks that might have missed today. One final thing, and we do have our next session planned. I am super excited that we're going to continue the content on supply chain in 2 weeks from now. And we want to, invite all of you guys to come and listen to that. We're going to have a couple of outside speakers. So these are not Microsoft employees, but we have a customer and a handful of C-level executives that are going to be joining us on February 9th to talk about how really implementing supply chain processes have driven higher ROI and better patient satisfaction. And so please be looking for that next session to come out and to allow you to engage with those. We also have a registration form that we want to make sure that if you are interested in getting the direct invites to these sessions, that you can, all you have to do is do it once. You don't have to do it over and over again, but just go ahead and check out the form that we post in, or the link that we post in the chat. And just go ahead and put your email in there, and we'll make sure that you get future sessions on your calendar. I think with that, that's all we had for today. We're so excited that you're all able to join us, and we hope to see you in our future and upcoming sessions. Thanks so much.